Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Allendale Public Schools commit to educate, inspire, and support all students. Amy, you got the roll? Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the audience are welcome to make comments at the time designated on the agenda. Please register on the sign-up sheet at the door and limit your comments to 3 minutes when your name is called. Out of respect for all individuals, please refrain from personal criticisms in an open forum. And there is more to that on policy 167.3. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Motion from Pam, second from Kevin. All in favor of the agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Agenda carries as presented. And superintendent comments.
Okay, first up, we have a bunch of board policies here that need to be changed. Came to our attention that one of the policies still listed Julia Reynolds as a compliance officer. And then that got me thinking that she's in a few of these, so I went and checked, and these all have Julia Reynolds still listed either as a compliance officer or a Title IX investigator. We did change that, and those were reassigned last year, but we hadn't changed it actually in the policy. Now that Beth Voss is on board, she will take over those responsibilities. So we need to just update anywhere where it said Julia Reynolds to Beth Voss. Now this is just one of those things. Years ago, you would put the position in, you wouldn't put the person's name in, and then about 6 years ago, they said that it just strengthened your policy to have an actual name listed. So that's why we do list a person's name, because the attorneys recommended that you want to have the actual name of the person responsible. So while it's a little more work, and anytime someone changes in that role, you're going to have to update it. I think it's better policy to have those specifically listed that way. So in every one of these policies, the only change that needs to be made is to update it from Julia Reynolds to Beth Voss. Any questions about that? Awesome. All right. Now, I get to do some asking here. So, over probably the last 5 years alone, we have added close to 100 positions in this district. A lot of that has to do, I'll tell you, with the fact that we hire student custodians, all the folks in the lunchrooms, because we added the ECC, so that was a lot of positions. So you think about the whole ECC building coming online, all the teachers, all the aides, the wraparound program, the fact that we're about to have our 6th GSRP classroom opening up in the next couple of weeks. So we've probably added about 100 positions or more in the last 5 years, but we have not increased at all any support in district office for doing HR. And it's just becoming overwhelming. And then you add some other layers onto that. Certification is a huge issue right now. So we have, there's a teacher shortage, and so we're seeing more and more teachers coming in with these emergency certifications, and for each one of them, it's a phone call to MDE. Sometimes you have to get sub-permits for teachers. We're getting a lot of teachers who have a teaching degree, but they don't have a teaching certificate because they can't pass the test. So that's a special circumstance that you have to go through the Michigan Department of Ed for. We're getting more and more applicants from out of state, and then you've got to deal with teacher certification reciprocity. Just all these multiple layers added on just make the HR role so much harder to deal with. We have more and more teachers, you know, taking time off, leave of absences, family medical leave. You know, it's harder and harder to deal with workers' comp claims, those kind of things. You know, we're looking for some help. I think attracting, recruiting, retaining high-quality staff, I think we've done a really good job with that. You know, like I've mentioned before, 16 new hires this year of professional staff, 15 of them came to us with experience, so we are getting the word out, we are recruiting high-quality staff, but it would be nice to have somebody in HR to actually do like a job description audit. I don't know when the last time that was done, to go through and make sure, you know, we've added some positions like coaching positions, interventionist positions, and when you do that, then sometimes those new positions take a few responsibilities from an old position, and if you don't update those job descriptions, there may be some overlap. It may not, you know, so just having somebody in HR who could go through that with fidelity. One of the things that we just have not had time for, there's been, you know, staff turnover in every district, a lot of turnover. Ours is no different, but we haven't had the time to do exit interviews. We'd love to be able to do exit interviews again. I think an HR person could do that. That would be very helpful information, especially as you talk about recruiting, to know what are the positives and what attracts staff here. When we talked about policy a few minutes ago, one of the nice things with an HR director is in a district, they are often the ones who really oversee the Neola policies in the 3,000s and the 4,000s, because that's professional staff and non-certified staff, those go to. And so this person operates in that world a lot, you know, those are the ones they really get to know. So it just gives the whole district somebody else to have a depth of understanding of those policies. I've been the lead negotiator, which is fine. I hate to say I enjoy negotiations, but I don't mind negotiations. It's good to talk with our staff and to see how we can do what's best for them and best for the district. And I think we've very successfully negotiated a lot of contracts with all of our labor groups, some union, some non-union. But it would be nice to have an HR person for a couple of reasons. Number one, again, it's good to have a second voice in the room, right? Somebody to support so I can hear their ideas as well. Troy actually helped me with that with the teachers' negotiations this year. But we know that things are going to ramp up a little here the next time we do a teacher negotiation because of all the changes to the prohibited subjects laws, the para laws that got changed last year, and to have somebody who could dig into those and really have communications with other HR directors in the area. I really do the best I can with that. I go to the meetings twice a month and try to stay on top of it, but it'd be nice to have an HR director to really be able to dig into those things. Having a knowledgeable HR director can save the district on legal fees. Right now, there's several times a year where we contact our attorney on different HR issues, and if you had a really experienced HR person, so obviously it wouldn't happen maybe right away, but you get an HR person in there who really knows what they're doing, and you find, this is what I'm told from other districts, is you find that you're calling the attorney less and less because your HR person has more and more experience dealing with some of those issues that maybe you're not sure of. So I put in here in the past 5 years, we've added over 100 positions. We started the wraparound program and the GSRP. I asked Jen Cry and Paul to do a little digging for us. So since July 1 of this year, July 1 to now, we've had 67 new employees. And again, a lot of that's custodial, a lot of that's lunch aides, bus aides, but wraparound aides. Again, we started 2 new GSRP classrooms, so that's 2 teachers and 4 aides right there. So that's 6 positions just in GSRP. But 67 new hires since July 1. 5 new contract staff. So when we talk about speech or PT or OT, sometimes we are able to hire those people in, but sometimes we have to hire them through a contracted service. But that all still takes onboarding to get them ready to go locally. We have 9 student teachers from the university level, and while they're not employees, you still have to do the same thing. You have to vet them out, you have to do the fingerprinting, so that adds to that. We have 7 employees who are on some form of leave, and so that, again, is another layer. You gotta make sure you're doing the leave requests, you make sure you know when they're going out, when they're coming back. For some of them, they take their leave and then they combine it with like a maternity leave, and then they combine it with FMLA, and so that's another layer. We've just beyond the new hires, we have a lot of internal position moves, and so we've got a lot of aides who might move from this gen ed aide position to that special ed aide, or we have teachers, we had a 4th grade teacher move to 2nd grade this year. We had a 5th grade teacher move to 1st grade this year. And all those moves, HR's got to track them, right? We got to make sure that it also puts a little bit of more burden on even like our technology people, because a 5th grade teacher is in part of the Oakwood communication group. But if they go to 1st grade now, they got to be moved out of those groups and those permissions for online programming to new permissions for the new building. So even internal moves create more work for an HR department. And so these are some of the things that I think having an HR director could really benefit this district. And again, we have not increased HR support even as the district has grown, even as we've added more counselors, more social workers, all those things, teachers. And so I do think there's a great need for it. What are some of the benefits that I see for myself and for the HR? I put that on the back if you haven't turned it over. For me, one of the things that I would really enjoy, I've had some success with grant writing, bringing some money in for like safety and security, for bringing in some money for our playgrounds, and I just think this would give me an opportunity to dig in even deeper. There's a lot of grant money out there right now, and I'd really like to make sure we don't miss an opportunity for any of it. I would like to spend more time in classrooms. We've talked about this before. That's not really the #1 priority for a superintendent. I mean, that's really the building principals, but I would like to get out a little bit more. And part of being in the buildings is we still have a pretty young admin team, and I would just like to, we have a lot of conversations, and I'd like to be able to go over and meet with them even more if I could. I'd like to provide greater support for the curriculum director. So the curriculum director and I, first it was Julia, and then it was Mindy, and now Beth. I have enjoyed great conversations with them when we talk through everything, right? Like we know what's going on, but I never really get to walk beside them, right? Like they're the ones kind of sitting in a lot of those meetings, and then we'll debrief after or whatever, because I'll come back from my meeting I went to, they'll come back from theirs. And I think that having some of this relief would allow me to really walk beside our curriculum director a little more and be more right in the forefront of some of those curriculum conversations. And so I would really think that would benefit the district. And then, this is kind of a time-specific thing, but as we're working through our bond planning, and we know that we're on a sort of an accelerated timeline, that's going to take a lot of time. If I'm going to do it with fidelity, make sure that we really communicate well to the community and to our stakeholders. I think this would give me more time for the planning, and then of course once it passes, then it'll give me more time for the implementation. And then for our HR support, again, that onboarding process is just, it's intense. You sign new people in, and they got to go through the fingerprinting, and in some cases, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, so I apologize, but like with preschool, I think it's 2 sets of fingerprints. Like you have to do, Scott, I'm right on that, right? Isn't it? There's some positions where they have to do a different set of fingerprinting, and there's just so much there for onboarding and going through the handbook, and so this will help. And then the rep report, that is the Registry of Educational Personnel. So it's the Registry of Educational Personnel. You have to log every single employee in this state record, and it has to be right, because if it's not, you can lose state funding, and districts have lost state funding. And again, as you get all these variables like sub-permits, emergency certifications, out-of-state certifications, You know, we have to make sure that a teacher who's certified in science, right, they may have a general science degree, so they can teach biology, anatomy, physiology, I think that's right, or they may just have a biology degree. So you got to be very careful that, you know, they're in the right certification. So when you put it in that rep report and they actually, now you have to report it every 30 days. It used to be, you know, not every 30 days. It's just a lot there. So having an HR director would definitely benefit this district because we've grown to the point now, we've got so many employees, there is a lot of movement. We know that we're in a time where a lot of businesses are just going through this staff turnover, and we have the kind of positions that do turn over a lot. You know, the student custodial thing turns over a lot. Even some of our other custodial positions turn over. Our lunch mom positions turn over quite a bit, you know, bus aides, those kind of things. So I think the time is right. I think most districts our size have an HR director. I think most of you know I tried to find a partner where we could maybe share one, and they're just, you know, bigger schools all have their own. Smaller school like a Saugatuck can't afford one, and there just aren't any partners out there for us. Most schools our size, Hamilton has a full-time person, so there just aren't that many opportunities to partner. So that is my introductory pitch to hiring an HR director. My goal would be, if this were approved, to post and maybe even start this person 1st of January. I did put on the front, and I put it in bold, so it was right there, the estimated cost. So an HR director is probably going to make somewhere around $110 or $120 a year. You have retirement costs, and then if they took full benefits, full family benefits, that's like $25,000 a year. So the total cost then would be somewhere between $170 and $180. Now, if they didn't take our insurance and they took cash in lieu, then maybe it's $20,000 less. But somewhere between $170 and $180 should be the total cost. Obviously, for this year, you know, if we started it in January, it'd be maybe half that, because you'd only be paying it for half the year. I will say that while our enrollment still looks like it's up a few, it wasn't enough to pay for this. However, we've been doing pretty well with some of the grant dollars that are coming in, and I think we're actually quite a bit ahead. And Scott, I don't know if you want to share anything about that, or?
Nothing really specific, but we have received about another $1.4 million in revenue this year in certain grants that we weren't aware of at the time we did the original budget. You know, a lot of that is going to be spent, but there's probably excess of close to $500,000 in there that, you know, drop to a bottom line where it looks right now.
Yeah. So we would have the funds.
Is this a position that would work through the summer, or how does that work?
These typically it would be like the curriculum director, they would come the first week in August and through the last week in June, so they basically take July off. However, with something like this, they may need to do some hiring over the summer, so you do some, you know, they might take the third week of June off and work the second week of July, that kind of thing. I just think they could really help our principals with, you know, posting positions, getting those positions out there, especially like even with special education, helping with Ryan. Those special ed positions turn over quite a bit right now, and so a lot of ways the position could support others in the district.
Currently, the building principals post the positions. How many employees do we have right now?
Is total employees now about 460, 470?
It'd be posted as, if you count everybody, all the custodial and lunch and all those additional.
How many was it?
About 460 or 470.
I missed the 4 part.
So some of these, policies we're gonna go through, would they take over any of some of that stuff too? Like the Title IX stuff or any of those things?
Yeah, the HR director would be your title. They would be.
I mean, some of these
Yeah.
these policies, so, and they would be a go-to for some of those things
Yep.
also.
Yeah,
So maybe take a little bit of pressure off the curriculum director.
yeah. Absolutely.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Coopersville just have made a full-time position also.
Yep, just this year, with Brent Haddon, who most of us know, he was their high school principal, and they moved him, so now they have a full, because that was the one I was really trying to strong arm Matt into sharing Brent with us. It's like, hey, he knows Allendale, he knows Coopersville, but they wanted a full-time person. They just, again, there's so many pieces to this that, so yeah, Coopersville just added a full-time HR director.
Is this, as far as our current staff, I'm guessing this would be a bonus to them, something that they would want, as far as like, is this somebody they would go to if they have a specific HR question? Is that their main line of support? Does that still go to you?
Honestly speaking, most of their HR questions are things that they go to like Jen with, or to, well, it's Jen now, right? So,
Or Ray.
Ray, they go to Ray sometimes
Payroll
too.
and benefit questions,
Yeah,
you know.
their questions are usually more like, hey, I got this timesheet I need to turn in, or can you tell me a little bit more about my benefits? But yeah, there are certainly certain questions about their certifications, for example. So like the HR director, every teacher has to update their certificate every 5 years. And so the HR director right now, we run a report and we find out whose certificate's about to expire, and then, you know, we contact them if that's something an HR director could come alongside and help them with. So I did have a teacher, true story, the first day of school after our opening, we were just kind of talking that day when I was going around to the buildings, and this person asked me, are we ever going to get an HR director? He said, I think that's our next hire. And I'm like, well, I'm hoping. But I was hoping for a stronger enrollment number, but I do think the grants give us an opportunity to afford this position. So I don't know, Liz, I do think there are some teachers who would really think this is the right way to go, but I haven't really spoken to enough to know where the teachers as a whole would fall on that.
Garth, you mentioned here for HR support staff, relieving some of those people to free them up to do more focused tasks. How many people in that HR support staff are we talking about?
Well, it's Jen mostly. Jen Cry does a lot of the HR stuff. There'd be some of it that it would help Ray. Again, there's some that would help benefit Paul in technology, because it's all about that communication, that streamlined communication. So, we try to be really tight with the fact that if you hire a new person, there's so many pieces. They gotta, Gary needs to know because they need an ID and keys and a key fob, and Paul needs to know because they need a laptop, and Jen needs to know for benefits, and so having one person in HR to kind of coordinate that communication would help actually multiple people with those parts.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any further questions for Garth? All
If you
right,
think of it any later, you shoot me an email.
thank you. Next on the agenda, we have discussion items, kind of open-ended discussion items. Anybody wants to talk about?
Just a quick question, Corey. Are we putting this on the agenda for our next meeting? As far as like a vote on this position, or we're not sure yet?
I think we would put it on the agenda unless we have some major objections to it or major questions that would change things for Dr. Cooper. So for right now, I would say a tentative yes.
Yes.
It would be on the agenda for a vote.
One question. We have Garth's evaluation next meeting too, is that correct? To be in November?
Yeah.
Am I correct? I just
Yeah.
happened to think of it today, I'm like, oh, we're getting into the next one's in November, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on the Next on the agenda, we have public comments.
There was nobody on the board.
All right, if anybody would like to make a public comment, they may at this time. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn at 6:26?
I make a motion to adjourn at 6:26 PM.
Motion from Kevin, support from Pam. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Shop Michael's Monster Deals today. Save big on Halloween faves and more. Don't let these offers vanish.